All right, guys, we're back again for another Bronco kind of update work video. Finally got it back from Milford, our college that pulled the doors out from me. I'm alumni there, so I got a free frame pulling for the side of it. So it's just sitting on a little cart right now. We haven't built a cart to keep it level so we can work on it. But I did need to pull it off the chassis because the first thing I'm going to do is actually work on the suspension, getting the motor mounted, getting the frame, you know, stripped down, brake lines, everything. It's going down to the bare bones and built up new. So I did kind of start working on it. Sorry I didn't take any videos of it, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I haven't done anything crazy to it yet. I just unbolted everything out of the Bronco, pulled it off with the lift, rolled it out, and then just found something to set that down on for now. Pretty much everything's out of it. There's a bunch of junk. I did like just cut my brake line to save me some time because they're getting redone. Pulled my shocks, these, and then this monstrosity actually is, so I set it to my ride height and I just kind of tacked it together both sides, and I leveled the whole thing so that way I can use a plumb bob and find where my axle centers and everything are. The gas tank needs to come out, and you got it leveled back here on a stand. So the next thing I'm going to be doing actually is pulling the axles out and kind of getting them set up on jack stands, so that way I can start taking my measurements for my four-link for the front and rear. Going to keep the pan hard bar in the front still, but I'm going to do a triangulated four-link in the rear. These are both coming out. These radius arms are getting cut off, and coil buckets, all that stuff is getting cut off, brake lines, everything. We're getting it down to the bare bones, stripping the axles both front and back. This is getting a truss across the top, so I have something to hook my four-link to for my triangulated four-link. Of course, leaf springs, all that stuff is going. We did get the new tires on. These are, I believe, 37 13.5 wides. Yep, 37 13.5 wides, just Ironmans. They're not the best tires, but I got them for cheap. I got 6 of them for cheap, so that way I can use them for mock-up, and we could probably run them for a while before we actually, you know, put new tires on it. So all these towers are going. Gonna build our own towers for our coilovers. And yeah, I'll try to kind of explain my process here of how I'm going about building this four-link. You can see here, I used my plumb bob down to the center of my axle, and it was 38 from the end of the frame to center. But since we are going up and bigger tires, I am going to move the back axle back 2 inches and the front axle forward 2 inches. So that way it's not super noticeable with anything on the body, but it does give us that little bit of extra wheelbase. If you guys have access to air tools and are taking on something like this, anybody that's worked on old vehicles, you know that they have these kind of like crushed rivets that hold everything into the frame, and a lot of times people will take a torch to each one of those and just try to torch them out. Well, there is, I would say, an easier way that I kind of picked up at the restoration shop that I worked at a couple of years ago, is actually, if you guys have an air hammer, just throw your sharp chisel on there and just let them eat right through those rivets. I already got my shocks out, these 3, and I'm just starting to punch rivets for all of my leaf springs, so that way I can pull those off the axles and get my tires taken off and my axles on jack stands and set to where I like it. But yeah, you just pop those guys off, and then once you have all the heads, you know, cut off, just stick a punch back in your air hammer and just punch those rivets through, and then boom, everything is just out right there. I do also, I kind of almost have the motor done. I kind of jumped the gun on painting it because actually this NP246 is coming out. We're switching it with a 241 just so we can have that manual shifting transfer case. I don't really want to mess with all the wiring of the push button, and honestly that push button would look really ugly in the Bronco when we're done. So we're just gonna put in a nice floor shifter probably and go from there. But you guys saw in our last video, I already pretty much have it done, just kind of covered up to keep some of the dirt and stuff out of it for now. So that's another thing I'm gonna have to find out for my four-link is getting at least measurements off of where those motor mounts are to where these motor mounts are now, but these will not be used. I'm going to build my own custom ones, but I want to take my measurement from here back to in here after I put the 241 on, so that way I know where my output is for my rear drive shaft. That way I can try to aim it towards the back of the transmission, and this is going to get clocked up with our four link, so that way we try to keep you know, no harsh angles out of the drive line in the rear. The front, I'm not really positive on what we're going to do there yet. I know before my training mount kind of got in the way of that forward drive shaft, so I'm going to have to kind of redesign that. But for our four link is I'm going to build, you know, hopefully just like a master brace on both sides that includes our training mount, if I can space it out right, because our old training mount, the one I just built, was right there. So if I can make it all into, you know, one big piece would be the best, and that way I can also design it around, you know, swooping it to clear for our front drive shaft. And since we have the side drive, I would like to do triangulated four link on the front, but I think we're going to run into clearance issues with our drive line, so we're going to end up running a straight four link back, and then I'm just going to modify that pan hard bar, and we shouldn't have any problems with our steering, because it already dropped back to that axle for our steering. So when I move it, you know, 2 inches forward, we really shouldn't have any issues there with our steering geometry. So it's going to be a process, but I just want to kind of go over with you guys, and then kind of as I go, just show you what I'm doing, and yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, got it pretty well torn down. Just going over this, show you kind of what I did before, and I'm also double checking it because pulling those axles out, I kind of tapped the frame on the stands a little bit, so just resquaring it up, making sure it's all level. So I do have it leveled side to side. Helps to check in a couple different spots just to make sure you got it level. It's going to make it easier for you to make sure you're locating everything right. I also have it leveled this way. So when I set it up, I want it to be just a little bit higher. So when I was setting my ride height, it was, dipped down in the front like, most vehicles do, but I want it to sit pretty much level. So what I did is I think I had to jack up the front, like 1.5 inches or something, then set my ride height and set it on my stands and in the back. And when I chose my ride height, I pretty much am just going off of, since I wanted to sit just a little bit higher, when I took the cab and everything off, when all the weight was off of it, I just set my ride height there. So, when I get my coilovers in, it still probably will sag a little bit, but that's my baseline. So now that I got it stripped down, I do need to actually go through and strip all the frame. Like, I would love to get it sandblasted, but I'll probably get everything welded in and put where I want it, and then take it back apart, sandblast it, and then we'll get it powder coated. But here's my old center line for my front axle. This did have a, had a 104-inch wheelbase from the factory. Here's my old axle center here. So 2 inches rearward in the back, 2 inches forward in the front. So that way I get an extra 4 inches of wheelbase. And then I just have some kind of made plumb bobs, and I set them up so that way I can take my front axle apart, put it on jack stands, get it lined up, and then I will set it underneath there, and then do the same back here, set it in there, set it so it's where, it'll be with the tires on it. And then I can start, taking my measurements of where I want my links to go, and making sure, like, running a piece of tape, installing, maybe mocking up where the drive shaft is going to be, making sure everything's going to clear front and back, and just keep going that way. So next I'm probably going to take everything off of this front axle, because I'm not going to need that. I'm going to need these shocks, not going to need my radius arms. I'm redoing the brake lines. I'm going to hold on to my panhard bar and my steering. In the back, this thing is pretty much all trash. We have this, I believe it's a 76 Ford that we're gonna make into our mobile welding rig. That bad boy right there has a brand new Ford 9-inch underneath it, which is the exact same axle. So instead of going through and cleaning this one up and rebuilding it, I'm just gonna snag that axle, because that is getting put on a different chassis anyway. So yeah, pretty stripped down. I am keeping my steering box on for now, just so I can use it for mock-up. I'll hang a plumb bob through there when I set my axle in and make sure that it's still semi in line with where my connecting rods are for my steering knuckles. So here's my front axle. I got it semi situated. I need a bigger jack stand there so I can tilt that up further, but I just got my plumb bobs on my new center, 2 inches forward, centered up. These are gonna have to get hacked off because those are for the old radius arms. This one I'm just gonna have to make sure that that's centered because it's shifted over that way. I'm just holding these together so they don't flop. Still level. I got my rear axle just on a stand so I can move it around until we get the new one pulled out of the other truck. Yeah, that's pretty much gonna be it for today. I didn't want to bore you guys too much with just disassembly and situation, but anybody who's ever done this, it's all part of it. So stay tuned. Hopefully next I'll probably start going through and cleaning up the frame, cleaning up all these holes, get my little brass backer, and we're just gonna start welding holes shut, chopping this random stuff off from somebody back in the 70s, adding things like this. Looks like they had a piece of angle iron for I don't know, for a hitch or something. And I think we're gonna have to rebuild these as they're pretty rusty and thin. And then once we get it cleaned up, kind of fresh slate with filling in all the holes that we don't want, then it's kind of time to start building it back up. We'll really get the axles situated and start grinding and adding bars and figuring out our geometry. I am going to use that 4-link calculator. I think Busted Knuckle Off-Road has been pushing. It's not going to do a whole lot of off-roading, but you know, I still would like it to not completely squat every time I hit the throttle, because we are hoping to get a little bit of horsepower out of the motor and the turbo, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. All right, I will try to push out smaller videos like this one, just of the process I'm going through. We'll just have to see. We're pretty busy in the shop right now, and I'm just doing this on my free time, so I guess stay tuned, guys. See ya.